So in the morning, we had these discussion questions up, just as sort of, things to jog your memory about things that you might be interested in talking about. And certainly a lot of them have come up during the course of the day, but we haven't talked specifically about some of them. At this point, Susan, I'm not sure exactly if you wanted to talk about these, or at this point, what we wanted to do was sort of have people talk about what we've touched on today, like what seems the most important to you. She does. Aha. Okay.
Sorry, I was trying not to get all. Okay. So with this question, what are your language needs with respect to what linguists and linguistics could offer? I'd like to kind of do a show of hands, and see get a sense of how important things are to the whole group. Raise your hand if you're interested in having a speaker census. Or let's see, I'm guessing a speaker census is also assessing the status of the language in your community.
People may be past that stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about a dictionary? People either want a dictionary or want a better dictionary. Yes, okay. Teaching materials. More teaching materials. A grammar of your language.
Well, Lindsay's hand went up.
It would depend on what kind of grammar.
Yeah, so kind of like when I asked an earlier question, either a grammar or a better grammar or a different kind of grammar.
Or a community-friendly grammar.
Yeah.
Accessible is the word. That's what.
Cleverly disguised as non-linguistic, but
Linguistic insights.
With linguistic insights and accurate, describing the language well. Making use of archival materials. A few. Yeah. Financial support. The basic instincts of life. Help with technology.
Lindsay, you can't raise your hand.
Are you? Other needs and yes.
What about training for either to do your own linguistic work or for other things for this kind of
Okay. So training and if you raise your hand, say what kind.
Training for our community teachers and I think to some extent the college administrators, like the dean and a few other people like that.
Uh-huh.
workshops on documentation tools provided by our community as well.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like what works symposium, not just for language activists, but for everybody, like other administrators, people who actually make decisions.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
To go along with that is kind of necessary a network forming, but then a shared site to discuss.
Oh, and you should mention the list of.
Oh, yes. So we're setting up a listserv of the people that are signed up for this program, even the folks that weren't able to make it today. And we're adding you in. So so it's sort of an opt-out thing if you decide you don't want to be part of the listserv. But so we can start the communication, and also if people. Oh yeah. So while we're talking about communication, how many people use for their language work any social media platforms like Twitter? Facebook. Okay. I think maybe on this listserv, one of the things we'll do if you're on, I'll start a topic of if you want to announce that you're on Facebook and want to be friended. I like to be friended by folks that I do language work with, so.
We could also do a Facebook page for the group,
Oh, we could. Would there be interest? Yes? Okay.
for those of us who do Facebook.
Yes. Other platforms, Instagram, anything I haven't mentioned? Okay. Ooh.
All right.
All right.
So, yeah, what we thought we would do here is actually break into groups and let you guys discuss in smaller groups. So the idea was to talk about things that we've touched on today. And if you're at a table with just two people, maybe you could join a table next to you or something so that there's more people to talk to. Or you could even mix it up so you're not with the same people you've been with all day. And Susan, you actually were the one who put in the internal and external. Do you want to explain a little bit more about what you meant by those?
Sure. So let's see here. I guess what I was thinking of is there are some discussions or needs or the phenomenon that are internal to like the people who are really involved in the language in your tribe or in your nation. And then there are things that happen externally, and by externally, it's almost like what I was thinking of is that there are people in my tribe that have nothing to do with language, but they're a tribal member, or they don't participate in anything language. They say that they don't have time for language, but they're in the community. So that was one sort of internal versus external. And then maybe almost, further out. So I guess that was what was meaningful to me, but you could interpret that however it comes up in your conversation. I know we could just keep talking, but we want to ask each table to pick one person to say briefly what you discussed at your table, and maybe come up to the microphone if you like, or just speak from your table. Okay. Shall I pick a table, or does a table wish to volunteer?
I don't think they wish to volunteer.
No, I don't think so either.
They're not paying any attention.
No, not a bit. Ayuki, Nanathorium Susan, Karukwa, Ayuki.
So we talked about some of the challenges of teaching, and then we talked about how important it is to create safe spaces for people to feel comfortable taking risks, and we talked about kind of the emotional component of language learning and how anxiety can prevent you from really letting yourself kind of learn language and open yourself to it. I told the story from the tribe actually of one of the language apprentices who got some recordings of elders and would put them on an MP3 player and put headphones on and listen to them while he slept. And his pronunciation got really amazingly good. That was one of the good ones. So we just talked about the importance of really hearing the language a lot in order to kind of get your pronunciation strong and stable.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Okay, now my table.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey. I try to speak out loud so I get everybody. Somebody like me, I've been in the military for 22 years. Kind of my ears are almost shot. So some of you, when you're talking out there, I can't hear you. So I just trying to see, look at your facial expression or your body language to see what else I could recognize or kind of keep up with you, what you're saying. But anyhow, we some of these issues, I think, yes, there is resources out there. And I talk about Navajo because that's what I know. I don't know other tribal languages or except maybe Apache, our neighbors. I can understand a little bit of what they say, but other than I don't know. But however, in trying to access resources, sometimes in my case, Navajo, I could go to these elders that are still with us out there, that have these good knowledge of, the knowledge that was gained back then with the kind of language that were said, that they could understand, and that they with the idea to carry that on to the next generation. But in doing so, it's a protocol, or I don't know if that's a correct word to say, but you go ask an elder or a medicine man. They have a lot of these knowledge, sacred knowledge about language, about culture, about leadership. But they probably gonna tell you it's gonna cost you maybe tobacco or some sort. There's always some sort of, you give them something of value in return for that knowledge. Because they say that if I just give it to you free, it's on me. Meaning that some of these knowledge that they understand how they got that is sacred. And this language that the Navajo language, as I understand it, it came to the Navajo people sacredly endowed by the Creator. So it's the Creator's language that we're speaking and writing at this time. And maybe it's unethical to take the Creator's language and study it in these ways, but I guess we're at the age where we have to do that to get a good understanding. If we're our own people interested in learning their own language, I'm pretty sure the Navajo people can come up with a model that does that. But there's more other people that are interested in the Navajo language. As I was researching that the Navajo language is the most studied by any ethnic group. For some reason, maybe it's because the way that the structural analysis of the language maybe something that interests. So in these studies that we did, I was saying this is a linguistic conference, but I'm also studying culture, Navajo culture, which is other things besides language. And I'm also studying leadership, the Navajo theoretical leadership. And these are leadership that before 1864, back in those days, the kind of leadership they had, and we're trying to get those back and study. So we'll need those knowledge, and these people that we have out there, they have those knowledge. And sometimes they say it's going to take a tobacco smoke or it's going to take a sweat lodge. Those are proper places to get these information. So, and to study, for me to study, I'll have to do some of these things. So I'm gonna have a tobacco ready, or do build a fire for the sweat lodge and invite medicine man over to tell me a story. Or on the other hand, storytelling. I was saying, no whole culture or cultural language, there's no comfort. This is a linguistic because I guess it's cross-cultural. So that's probably the reason why all these other languages, we all got here together that way. So we're trying to see how we can deal with these languages on different. But back home, it's a little bit different setting than that. It's a lot easier, I think, back home. That's what I think. Thank you.
Is another table want to tell us? We don't have tons of time, but I would love to hear what you guys talked about.
Our table talked about cultural language appropriation by non-Indians, and to try to answer the question, I think there was a great article a while back called "Who Owns the Language?" And I'm not so sure that that has been adequately been answered. And so between my niece here, her nation, the Southern Utes, they feel very strongly about only the language being available to the enrolled members, the Ute people. On the other hand, the Omaha people, we have something out there for free called the Omaha app. And anybody can learn. However, there is a divided feeling within the community that who owns the language here? And again, it's divided. Some of the elders feel like, well, it's okay. And then others are very strongly about ownership. And then, of course, asking the question, well, if we're not teaching our own, then why are others learning? Not only that, but when you learn languages in this manner without learning the culture from where the sacred language comes from, then the language is, I don't know what it is. It loses its identity. And so I can understand, say academic freedom on one hand, and then the other, of course, is ownership. And so looking at both of these, I tend towards the ownership at this point. But I'm also very appreciative. For example, we have a beloved genealogist who has given us his original lifelong work of all the families since the 1700s, who is descended from whom, and how this comes down, and in accordance with the culture. I belong to my father's clan, that's where all my identity comes from, although I have a relationship with my mother's, and all the things that, the responsibilities that follow along with that. And he learned Omaha along the way. And at one of our harvest gatherings, he came home and I brought him up to my house to eat with all of my assorted relatives. And her grandma said, she was sitting there with my mother, she was the older sister. And her grandma said to my mother, "Who did Nihusa bring this white man?" My mother said in Omaha, she said his name, it's Paul Grill. She brought him here because he knows the language. She said, "Oh, and I suppose this white man's going to want to eat with us," which was the goal, which was the reason, in Omaha. And he responded to her. He said, "Oh," and then he proceeded to tell her, "Omaha, I was invited, that's why I'm here." My aunt about fell through the floor. She wanted the ground to open up. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." She apologized profusely. But at the same time, the rest of the Omahas in attendance were like, "Wow, this is so cool." They loved it that he, knew our language. The awesome thing about him is just because he didn't become a wannabe. I mean, he's a white guy. I'm just going to say it that way. But he knew our language, but he didn't try to pretend that he knew everything about us. So we sort of, and that's just an added story to what we were talking about here in terms of language appropriation, cultural appropriation, and these kinds of things that come along with language. Language and culture are not isolated from one another. One embeds the other, and I'm not sure which carries which. Does the language carry the culture? Does the culture carry the language? And so as we look at these things, this is why I'm involved with our language so intimately, is that when you use certain phrases, when you say things in a certain way, it has to be appropriate for that particular context and that particular situation. And you got to understand who's talking to who, or who's, or what's going on here in order to grasp fluency. So that's kind of what we talked about, and there is some work out there. If you get on the internet, you want to find out about the Omaha tribe. That all of that was written by a non-Omaha who felt he was adopted by my tribe. The Omaha people have never adopted anybody but the guy I'm talking about, Paul Brill. Only one adoption since 1854. And the guy that's out there now, well, he's gone, but he leaves his work behind, and anybody who wants to find out anything about Omaha has to read his work. None of it's been written by you, Omaha, but there it is. But a lot of people have written about us, and I'm looking at all of those, and the things that I find about us is, and I find, I'm concluding here, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm done, is that in terms of decolonization, which is what this process, as I see it, really is, in terms of reclaiming ourselves and our identity. The Wajaji have it correctly, and we've adopted this as the Degi dialect conference, is that language, language is sovereignty. If you don't have your language and you don't have your identity, what makes us distinct peoples under the Constitution of the United States? So it does have wide reverberating consequences. So if you don't have your language, you don't have your culture, you don't have your history, you don't have your tradition, then why do you have any parcel of land? So it all comes together. This is why I think our college and our people feel this at a deep level, and this is why language is so important. So language is sovereignty. To share that
That's
with you, and it comes from the Degi people. And I hammer that home with my students in my history classes all the time. Language is sovereignty. You've got to get into those language classes, learn as much as you can about who you really are. Because you're not a white person, you're not a white lady, you're not a white lady. But yes, you have to get that education, and what happens is you have got to learn to walk in two worlds. That's just how it is. Get your PhDs, become the lawyers that you need to be, but never ever buy into the colonial thought that you are savage, primitive, or uncivilized, because that's what all of history tells about you, and that's what sociology, all the ologies talk about when we talk about American Indians. Reject it. Become critical readers of when they, it's just absolutely amazing that of the writings of the time, when I read Alice Fletcher and Dorsey, and in their savage manner. But that was times. But it hasn't gone away. This is why, so language is sovereignty, ladies and gentlemen, so do all you can to get it back. This is where your identity is.
That's a really great slogan to have. I really like that.
Thank you.
I shouldn't call it a slogan, maybe a saying or a motto. What's a better word?
Language is sovereignty.
Yeah. Principle.
Should we do in the interest of time, should we do the picture before we do the last session? It's 4:26.
Sure. Should we do that? Unless you guys wanted to.
Let's see that.
Yeah.
What was one thing you talked about at your table?
I think motivating learners. How do we motivate them? We're motivated as instructors, teachers, but how do we get our students to be wanting to learn language? That's one of the things.
That's big. Really big, yeah.
Well, we talked about the role of tribal colleges in language revitalization, and then talking about being the ones that are producing the work as opposed to being studied. So